Central to The Last of Us Part 2 is the pursuit of revenge and its devastating emotional impact on our central characters. I'm Dan, aka Wolf, and today we're going to explore the scientific study of the real psychological and emotional impacts of revenge and how this is mirrored in the authentic portrayal of Ellie and Abby in The Last of Us Part 2. But first, I'm going to ask you, if you're jamming out to the content that I produce, subscribe to me. Leverage the unrivaled power of that notification bell, and don't forget to leave your love in the comments. Come talk to me on Twitch, where I stream throughout the week, and we are always having the fun and engaging with each other in interesting and unique ways. After all, you never know what I'm going to come up with next. Most of us are no stranger to revenge stories. From the Count of Monte Cristo to the Charles Bronson Death Wish movies, revenge is all too often explored in media as an indulgent gratification for perceived injustice, or as retaliation for abuses suffered to the protagonist or the protagonist's loved ones. It is all too often presented by fetishizing violence as a form of maladaptive catharsis, and is almost always presented in a rewarding fashion, telling us that the act of revenge is medicine for the terrible things that someone did to us. This is how revenge stories are almost always told, that is, until The Last of Us Part 2. Instead of satisfaction, Ellie and Abby damage themselves and their relationships. They cross lines that only bring them more pain instead of the emotional medicine promised to them and us in nearly every human story about revenge. A study was done in 2008 on the consequences of revenge, which concluded that, instead of feeling better, people tend to feel worse after getting revenge. The study found that the act of vengeance tends to make people dwell on what happened longer, and in fact have more difficulty moving on from the original events for which they sought revenge for. And perhaps most importantly, those who carried out revenge never anticipated the emotional consequences of witnessing or delivering the punishment. In a 2002 paper in the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, their research observed higher levels of aggression in people who had supposedly vented their anger than in those who had done nothing at all. These behavioral scientists observed that instead of quenching hostility, revenge typically prolonged the unpleasantness of the original offense, and concluded that bringing harm upon the offenders was seldom enough to satisfy a person's vengeful personality. They also found that, instead of delivering justice, revenge often created a, quote, cycle of retaliation, because the moral equilibrium between the offender and the offendee were seldom similar. This research is on full display in Ellie and Abby's cycle of violence, as neither woman is able to put herself in the other woman's shoes as offender and offendee. And quite ironically, many vengeful players failed to do the same, reflecting not only the major point of The Last of Us Part 2, but validating the vast research done in this field. There is, of course, no one-size-fits-all for the approach to revenge, regret, and perpetuated self-pain, as there are many aspects to consider. Some people are simply vengeful by nature, and their maladaptive behavior can be readily observed in how they reconcile even mundane conflicts in their everyday lives, let alone something as extreme as what Ellie and Abby had to deal with. Others are simply severely damaged individuals who were perhaps broken long before the event that stoked their act of revenge, such as the story of Marianne Bachmeier, who avenged her 7-year-old daughter by killing her rapist and murderer when she opened fire in a crowded German courtroom, shooting her child's killer 6 times. Her story is often presented somewhat out of context, suggesting that Marianne was a typical grieving mother that had lived a normal life, exacting vengeance. But a closer look reveals something far more tragic. Not only was Marianne the daughter of a member of Hitler's Waffen-SS, she had also given up her 2 previous children for adoption, and was herself a rape victim while pregnant with her 2nd child, painting the portrait of a tortured soul long before her 3rd child was killed and she chose to pursue revenge. While The Last of Us is not the only story to give us perhaps a more sobering view of the impact of carrying out revenge, in fact, True Detective's Ray Velcoro is a great example of a man tragically destroying his own family and his sense of self by murdering the man who raped his wife. I think we can all agree that depictions of revenge, such as the way we observe its impact on Abby and Ellie, are few and far between, making The Last of Us Part 2 a breath of fresh air. The glorification of deadly force against violent criminals is not just saturated in our media, but it is pervasive in our culture. One need only read YouTube comments on true crime videos or browse subreddits such as Justice Served to see comments encouraging the use of deadly force and worshiping those who have carried out such acts of perceived justice. In many ways similar to the mythology of the epic duel, the revenge fantasy can be a maladaptive projection onto our outer world in the pursuit of inner satisfaction, instead of focusing on what's happening inside us so we can process our pain and transcend its hold on us as best we possibly can. The 2008 research paper ends with the following quote that I think is appropriate here. "A man that studieth revenge keeps his own wounds green, which otherwise would heal and do well." If this video meant something to you, you can help me build something great by subscribing and sharing the good vibes and good spores of this content across the four corners of the internet. You can stay connected by joining my Discord and chatting it up with me and other members of the Wolfpack, where we're always keeping it positive and focusing on the fun. Just click on the Discord link in the description. Follow me on Twitter and show me pictures of the wolf in your life. And don't forget that I have other videos that may provide you with something you didn't know that you were searching for. Until next time, I will catch you in the wilderness of the mental.
Suddenly, I heard a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door.